Hey, everybody. Vince Easley here. What matters? We're going to take a ponder gander. Got a few subjects today, and and I'm going to start out with the patties and the pooch and the patties and bridging the gap. So, scurvy over on Olive, that's Oregonian Live, and over on Twitter and at thefogbow.com. So I've been looking at that over there a little bit, kind of appreciating some of your stuff that y'all bring together, but particularly for the scurvy, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, the scurvy dog. Anyways, I'd like to first of all go back, some months ago when I was visiting y'all over there at the Olive, and so my thanks to you for being polite, even when you're giving me a little grief there. And I do appreciate honest criticism, and sometimes I'll even tolerate that for myself when others are being yeah, beyond reasonable, anyways. And unless you're going to come attacking somebody that doesn't have the ability to defend themselves, so hit and run ad hominem in that case is like hominy, and I'll grind it to grits, and that's what you get. So, anyways. I do want to reach across. I would like to talk to you or any of your friends. And hi, Melissa, MD Louder. I think I tried to understand her, and I think she told me pretty much in response that obsession was her driving goal in what she does. But I am trying to understand a little bit, and let me define Patty here and in an acronym. So debated back and forth, and I still may change my mind on the spelling of Pattie and make it to be Patdies. But whether it be terminate or destroy for the P or the D, it's a positioned attempt to terminate individual entity sovereignty. Now, I've been watching the left and right for some decades here and studying what matters and how it works and why it works and who all's behind it. So looking at this, we would think to see at least some commonality in the direction that we go uh, in being positioned actually together against the attempt against all of us in this world. And don't think that one push against another is not it's not been said about somebody to bring that about. Anyways, so if you'd like to reach out, if you'd like to chat and try to get understanding, I'd appreciate that. And I'd also like to ask, because I was considering joining that forum over there, the forum that is at the Fog Bow, but it gives you a pretty definite notice there when you start that process that if you get hacked, it ain't their fault. So it really gives me cause to pause, and maybe you might have some answer to that. Anyways, there's a lot to this idea of freedom and what matters worldwide, and that's what we're going to do is take a little ponder gander. Some preliminary news. I was in contact today with Ed Euling, so I'll be having a little closer look at him. He's running for lieutenant governor as a nonpartisan here in the state of Nevada. Spoke with him for some while this morning and going to meet with him this evening and have a further talk. Now, tomorrow, down on Martin Luther King, 4:30, I believe it is, uh, Martin Luther King, I think it's probably by the sheriff's department. But anyways, you can look that up. It's a march for that kid that was killed up there in Sacramento, shot by the police up there. There'll be a lot of some activists there. There'll be Ramsey Dennison. He made the movie What Happens in Vegas. Kelly Patterson. There's some other activists that'll be attending that. So tomorrow, 4:30 here in Las Vegas, and I hope to be down there. I expect to be anyways. Uh, so got some more news coming out here. Some reporting from myself for Real Liberty Media, and I'm not seeing. Are you still in chat over there, Brand?
Yep.
Righty. What's anybody saying? Oh, you're going to make me read. You got any summary? Well, preface here. All right. Hello, Chloe. You hear me? And there's Hans Dredd. Any particulars relay through Brand? If that way, I won't be able to try to do two things at once because I'm already chewing bubble gum. So, anyways, here we go. We're going to talk about. Just wonder where we ease into this. Now we're going to talk about. I'm going to actually move this microphone and stuff here. But we're going to talk about Trump and the wall. But I'm not sure if I want to start that out. Maybe I should. I think that maybe we'll, or I should save it for last because we're probably going to be throwing fisticuffs by the time we're done with this. I'm not in favor of walls personally, and we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk. I think we'll start. You want to start with Trump and his damn wall? And but we've also want to talk more about the Bundy Ranch and the Malheur refuge occupation up in Oregon, and informants. I was talking to Gremner before the broadcast, and Mama Bear Terry Lionel. She's going to be on air. She's supposed to be last Monday, but had some things come up, so we're looking to go to the Ochelia Effect Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 out on the East Coast, 5 p.m. here on the left coast. We're going to have some insightful discussion. I met Mama Bear in 2014 and again back out here in Vegas. And so we're going to recount some of our encounters and have a discussion. I like Mama Bear personally. There's a lot of other people have some other many opinions, but we're going to talk about why and what she did as an FBI informant. Brandon and I are also going to be talking a little bit about some informants and some agent provocateurs. And we're going to explore some questions. Now, personally, I don't have particulars or all some stuff I've heard. So we're going to have a ponder gander at that as well. Just think about it and look at it without making any definitions or statement on actualities of some of these people. And so let me move this mic over here and get a little bottle of this water over here. Hit that button down, save battery, and I might have to plug in a little bit. Here I go. Brand, I'm going to hand you this over here, the mic, and let's get a sound check. If Grimner, if you'll just come back. We may want to pull together just a little bit more.
What do you got?
How's that sounding right there?
Sounds fine.
Yeah, go ahead, Brand. Give us a word. Say howdy.
Hello out there.
Loud and clear there, Brand.
Loud and clear, Brand. All right, so I got to pull this plug out of my ear, and we're going to have a talk. I'm going to go grab a drink of water after we introduce Brand. All right, Brand, here we go. So hopefully we got good audio right here. I'm sitting back down.
Okay.
Let's talk about the wall. And I'll put my glasses on that. And yeah, thank you. And so, won't you give your position on the wall?
Well, historically and constitutionally, it's always, the United States government constitutionally has exercised that constitutional requirement is to control the borders. Now, back in the 1800s and prior to the 1800s, nobody really seemed to care. We had all kinds of immigration and pioneers that came here from different countries, but eventually it did reach the point where the borders began to be regulated. Again, that is one of the things that's in the Enclave Clause, Article 1, and it's we the people grant the federal government to control our borders. So I don't see anything that this administration has done that is unconstitutional and is not required. Now there's a lot of historical facts, with different countries where it was very important that they did control their borders. The Bible is full of that sort of thing. And I like what Michael Savage used to say, is without borders, we don't really even have a country. Now, the borders are regulated. We do allow a certain amount of immigration every year. And the key there in who is allowed to immigrate here and who isn't is they have to pass certain tests. There's certain criteria they have to pass. And so if they can do that and come in here and be a credit to our society, then fine and dandy, and we will absorb them as many as our economy will allow at the time. Now, who would not be allowed to immigrate? Well, people that have allegiance to other countries or an allegiance to some radical thought patterns. And that's where I think the Muslim thing comes in, whether they should be allowed to immigrate here or not. If they take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, then I have no problem with them either. But if their oath is to an archaic, insidious, and hideous laws that abuse, across the board, women in so many different ways, children, people of other faiths are deemed less than a human being. They're deemed as livestock. Well, and they can be treated accordingly. Now, see, I have issues with that. And I see this actually infiltrating where we have a tremendous number of, people that are coming to this country and are running for political office, and their allegiance is to the Nation of Islam. And that spills over in so many different ways. I've actually seen them taking an oath on the Quran rather than the Bible. Okay, so that tells me that their belief system is in the Nation of Islam, which is also Sharia law. Now, we're not a border state here in Nevada, but we're pretty darn close. So these border states, Arizona, California, Nevada somewhat, have had a tremendous influx in the past of an organization called La Raza, which in Spanish means the race. And from what I understand, before they migrate here illegally, many of them are joining the Nation of Islam. Okay, and so I see a real issue with that because they're not going through the proper protocols, learning about our Constitution, our laws that have made this nation great, and they're actually bringing in a whole different ideology. And in Southern Nevada here has been a Trojan horse. These people, many of them work in the Culinary Union here on the Strip. And when Harry Reid was elected as a senator this last time, he had buses go up and down the strip, and they filled it up with illegals that voted as a block for Harry Reid. And so I see this as a Trojan horse that has to be addressed. Now, having said all that, I want to say this. I don't believe in dividing families. Legitimate families that have come here for a better way of life and actually want to integrate with society, adopt our culture, the better parts of our culture, I may say, then I think we should do all we can to keep those people here and provide them with certain protections. Because in the end, when the end result as Americans, we're all about fairness, we're all about love, and we're all about families. And so there, in my mind, there's a provision that needs to be in place for those families that come here for freedom, a better way of life, for protections from the country they have left. Many times people are trying to get to America so they're not going to be killed by a drug cartel or by some corrupt government. Okay, and we have provisions for those people also. and I'm trying to think of the name of it offhand, and it's escaping me right now. But so I'm not all about keeping everybody out. I don't believe in that. We are a nation of immigrants that have come here. My great grandparents, my grandparents came here as immigrants. In fact, my first grandfather came here from England via Canada after World War I, and never did become an American citizen. But he helped build the Boulder Dam. He was always a credit to society. He did great and wonderful things for his family and friends and local people here in Southern Nevada. So, all these things need to be factored in and considered, and then also consider the time that we're living in and the threats that we have that are coming from around the world. And, these people, when I say these people, these crooked, tyrannical leaders of the world, they understand that America is the last bastion of freedom, and they want to rub it out. And there's different ways you can rub it out. To me, the most insidious way is right under our nose. I've actually listened to leaders of the Nation of Islam come right out and say the way they're going to take over the free world is get involved with all of our Social Security systems, our entitlements that we give to people that come over here, and the other countries do the same thing. And then they're going to, while we pay them to reproduce. The last I checked, for example, in England has right around one person per couple, where the average, and I'm talking about the average English person historically, whereas the immigrants, the Muslim immigrants, are right at 6. And all you have to do the math, and you will realize in a decade or so, you are going to be the minority. And they've even boasted about this, and then they will get all their laws in place. There's many people that say England is lost and that you can't come back out of this. There's many places in Europe where they're saying they're lost. They can't return out of this because this Muslim influence, the Sharia law, and has gained political power and is virtually impossible to eradicate. So for America, I do not want to see us going down that road. I see it as a clear and present danger, and it has to be resisted now before these basically they're like hypocrites. They say one thing to get in political office, and then, like so many other politicians, once they get in there, they change their entire venue. And I see this as one of the things that's going to happen with the Nation of Islam in this country if we're not very, very careful. So I think that kind of sums up that portion of it. If you want to, Vincent's writing right now, but here it is.
All right. Well, I'll hand you back this right here. Let me just trade places.
There you go.
We'll be better positioned. Yeah, I think. So looking for Pooch, welcome, and anybody else come over. So you'll have to come back if you got in with the wall. You'll have to come back to the beginning, and that'll post a little later, the past cast. I'd like to give a big shout out right now to Hal Anthony coming up Sunday at noon on the left coast. That's noon o'clock out here in Pacific time. And for this here bit of information, talking about borders and walls and cell walls, is if you look in the body and how the you're protected from invasion, right? These borders. Now, I might compare this maybe perhaps to pharmaceuticals and addressing the symptom instead of the cause. So, for immigrants, for instance, what's causing all these people to seek another place to live? Well, military-industrial complex, of course. That's backed by the financial industrial complex, and that's all tied in with the political industrial complex, and it's all controlled one upon another. Now, I would refer back to Bruce Doucette back in Denver and the tyranny I saw there. poor Bruce is, potentially the rest of his life in prison now, challenging the system in a way that you're entering their system sometimes is counterproductive. And there's, we just see the results. So we're going to talk also a little bit here about this, what's this FLA and what they're calling sovereign citizen. The pooch would call them sovereign citizens, but I don't think these people would call themselves sovereign citizens by any means, being an oxymoron. But let's go back to the borders and the wall. Cowboy logic will tell you that you fence sheep in, but you fence goats out. Personally, I'm not much of a sheep, so I might want to jump that wall one day myself and go the other way, and I'd hate to be fenced in. Right. And so that's going in and challenging, the system that we're in. And as I told Ryan English, the FBI agent, the whatever they call that, special assistant witness that is also the prosecutor and the investigator, he and Byrne, the U.S. Marshal appointed from the Denver Sheriff's Department, Mrs. Wart, or Ms. Wart, as it may be, and who else was in there? So I got, yes, the robber ship, his robber ship, Robert Shapiro, the Denver prosecutor, who threatened me, yes, with insinuating that I was harassing them there in Denver for taking public photographs. You're a cock. What do you call a little banty rooster cock was flaring up the way you did in court. You're a disgrace, and you stand for the oppression. Your face is, you bore it all. And the judge, Spear, all these names I find so coincidental how they play the spear, the piercing spear of that judge. And he tore his face mask off too. And anyways, I just wonder, all this conflict, right? And we come back to these walls, these borders, these cells in our own body. And that's where we stand positioned, right? For individual sovereignty as entities, right? We have that right for self-defense, just like inside the body, the cell walls and the white blood cells, our soldiers. So we're in this world of death. And that is a system that we live in. It's a system of destruction and death. So when we challenge that with our right to life, whether it be bearing of arms for preservation of one's life, whether it be against a robber, public or private, that's what that's there for. We have that. So, one says God-given and another says natural born. So however you like to define that for yourself, I think it's obvious, the observation of nature. We have the right to defense. But if we've got a cause and we have a symptom, if you're fighting the symptom, then it's a never-ending battle. Just like cancer, right? If you're going traditional cancer treatment, it's a system of death. It's destruction, to destroy. It's antibiotic. It's anti-life, as opposed to, of course, pro-life. The right to contract one with another. So we consider this wall, this border across a landmass, that's occupied by people that have been there for generations. Those people, would be then separated? How do you go back and forth? You've got a cousin just a few miles over there across the river. People want to come to work, isn't that the American dream? I think it is. As far as I'll be specific with Mexicans here in Las Vegas, particularly. Since 1969, as a kid, back and forth my whole life, I've seen the change in demographics, and when you look back at the American dream back to the 50s and 60s, that was really beginning to be crushed in the 70s during that big recession and all that business back then between Nixon and Carter. But anyway, so we see a resurgence of the American dream, a living the American dream of working hard and owning your own place. When I say that, of course, I mean that's renting from the government as long as you keep paying your taxes. But that's a little separate issue there of how do we, of course, as a municipality, the city, in county and so forth, you have to have operations, and sometimes we go beyond that scope. It's kind of like a growth and a tumorous growth then that lives upon as a bane upon society on the living force, and it's sucking it out. And that's what we see is the waste and spend and kill, steal, and destroy. That destruction of the system of the many names you might put upon it, from the corporatocracy to the New World Order. But there is a system, and we see it has been being manipulated and has been for a very long time. And that brings us to the conflict and, trying to mesh people in that force. Any force is wrong. So forcing people to migrate, specifically considering the Muslim, then you get the good and the bad, and because you've, of course, manipulated, you've social engineering by wars of aggression against these people, and they think that there's not going to be some few of them come out, if more or less or many, with a vendetta, and then to integrate them into another society is wrong. But what I say, have no compassion. No, I say stop what causes it. Let's address that instead of the symptom. Let's go at the cause. The border. Okay, so cell walls are there to protect the entity. So as far as nations, we can build bridges instead of walls, I would say. And again, back to the patties. I'd like to reach over and have a conversation with y'all. VinE the Poot here. You guys never call me by my name. Always Vince or Vincent. Always so kind and nice. Mostly. Yeah. How's the conversation over there, Brandon?
I'll take a look at something.
All right. Would you like to switch up a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to trade places.
Okay. I'm going to address a couple things that Vincent was attempting to say there. If you didn't, hopefully you caught it. Addressing the root of the problem, and assuming that that we had something to do with it as Americans, which I think is a huge assumption, But assuming that, my mama used to always tell me 2 wrongs don't make a right. So, and the fact of the matter is, when you contract with somebody breaking the law, you become aiding and abetting that lawbreaker in our court system. That is considered conspiracy and racketeering. So now I'm going back to whether we help this or not. And I say we very, very loosely, because we've been taken over. This government's been taken over by the banksters a long time ago, and we're trying to recover it. But I will be the first to admit that banksters have disrupted nations historically for probably several thousand years, if not longer. So in the way they do it, of course, is they use us, Americans, as pawns, our military, to enforce their worldwide statutes. And that is wrong, and we need to do something about it. However, I don't stake any claim or make any claim to what they're doing. What they're doing to other countries is wrong, but it's also wrong to violate our own laws. And I don't think there's very little argument that the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, it's in Section 8 and 9. I forget the exact clause of 8, but anybody that reads that will understand that those powers that we granted through the Enclave Clause also include, and I hate to say this because I'm not a big fan of the federal government in so many different ways, but this is one of the powers that we gave them as people to control our borders. Now, what kind of job have they been doing? They've been doing a horrible job under the Obama administration. Our border patrols have been neglected. They have been killed and not allowed to do their job and their duty. And so many of these people that have crossed the border are here for one reason, and that is to take advantage of our good nature and system, or to kill and rape. And we're seeing it all the time. And fortunately, it looks like we're finally coming to the surface and starting to do something about it. But what I'm going to say now is a huge but, because it kind of goes against some of the things I just said. I think we need to absolutely make provisions of families, people that came here possibly unknowingly as a child and got involved in the system, have worked hard, got educated, got a job, and are credits to society. I absolutely believe there needs to be a provision for those people. And I think the Trump administration has actually outlined that they do want to help those particular people. One of the things that leads to a decay in any civilization is when people basically quit reproducing. In the United States, the average family size has gotten very, very small. And there has to be producers. You can't just be completely a taker. And we have all the baby boomers are going on Social Security, and that's something that has to be addressed. But so many of the people are no longer producers. They're simply takers. And, when we can bring in hardworking people that believe in the American way, that want to live the American dream, that want to have a house of their own, that want to be able to retire someday. I think we need to do all we can to accommodate them. And so it's not, it's not all just one way. There, with me at least, there is some provisions there to help the good people of the world. And now we got birds flying all around the house, so that keeps them quiet. They're not near as loud if you just let them fly around. So anyhow, I think I addressed that. And giving you all some different, ideas there. I would love to get rid of the banksters. Okay, that's our biggest problem in this country. When you get right down to it, it's a financial arm of the kingdom of the devil, and they constantly destroying other nations. I mean, the best example I know of is Libya under Omar Gaddafi and what happened there. Libya under Omar Gaddafi was one of the most progressive countries in the Middle East. He took wonderful care of his people. He was a dictator, of course, and he got more benign as the older he got. But the fact of the matter is he took care of his own people. They got free college. They got free housing, and they got their first car was free and things of that nature. And it was an up-and-coming country, all kinds of freedoms there with people. And because Omar Gaddafi wanted to go to a gold-backed currency and was recruiting other nations to go to a gold-backed currency, they became enemy number one under, the administrations of the United States of America. Because once you get that thing going, or there's actually an accountability for money, you just can't push a button on the printing press and print it off and then give it to all your buddies and your friends and things of that nature, or whatever your pet project is, which usually is not a good deal. Once you stop all that, okay, now you have a real so they can't allow that. Seeing Hillary Clinton, her little statement, something like this. Excuse me.
Yeah,
I thought I shut that off. We saw it, and Omar Gaddafi died. Well, that was Hillary Clinton. So, what the heck was she saying that for? Because this monetary system that we live under was being threatened. So, and now it's a good deal that Trump has finally come out and said he wants to embrace gold-backed currency, because we're really not going to have any choice. You get right down to it. Russia is going to control the entire gas and oil market in a very few short years. They have reserves that are unbelievable. They dwarf the known world's reserves. I've heard they're going to sell it on the market as low as $10 a barrel. So that's your petrodollar, and it's going to collapse in the rest of the world. So we got to do this. And what's neat about the whole thing is it will be the demise of the Rothschilds bankers in the world. These are the people that have been nation building and nation destroying for, at least 400 years. Okay. And all those people that are involved with it, the Rockefellers and Bilderbergs, Warburgs, the Schiffs, the DuPonts, they're all going to be out of power. And George Soros is going to be out of power. So, this is one thing that we can do, and then we can get out from underneath the stigma that is America, that we have been promoting all of these abominations in the rest of the world. So I think that clarifies my position pretty clear on the whole thing. So,
well, I'll swap you out here in a minute. I'm okay. All right. Yeah, that's fine. Either way.
What do you want to do?
You can move it over.
Okay.
All right. Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, I don't like Trump, none at all. Haven't from the beginning. And when my friend back in Arkansas said Trump was going to be the next president, before everybody else thought that, I thought he was an idiot. I thought, well, there ain't no way anybody's going to elect this narcissist welfare queen to be president. And I'll tell you why Hillary would have been an honest vote. At least then people would have been admitting that the criminal. Here, let me hand you this. No, that honest. By voting for Hillary, it would have been an admission that we're okay with criminals running our government, and that's what we have. Thankfully, there are some people starting to fight, and a lot of people here. Well, perhaps. What are you laughing at? You gotta tell me.
I can't repeat.
Okay. All right. So, of course, some people do not agree with participation in government. I think there's a hope if we concentrate efforts at a local level, certainly countywide. Now, when you get into the cities, it'd be hard to overcome. There's a lot of diversity, and well, it should be, I guess. But I don't think cities then should necessarily be able to dictate to everybody else statewide how to live. And then, of course, you come into the federal level. And we see all that as stock, talking about draining the swamp. Well, I don't see any draining going on. Even if you did drain the swamp, you still got all the gators out there. So, yeah, we're seeing the Abdullah Oblongata effect for sure in government, especially at the high levels. So it's been decades and, even centuries of manipulation in society and governments and the shifting or at least even perceived shifting of powers. Trump's a chump. He's a big old pile of dump. That's just, obvious narcissist or at least certainly, it troubles me that people would think that he would be any hero. What does he make his money on creating things or destroying it? Well, I think for the most part of how his operations work is, what was that called when cannibalism there on the corporate cannibalism? It hit, I forget. We was talking about it yesterday. Anyways, never mind. No, it's all trickery left and right. And that's what I see a lot of in the poot versus the petty here. And I really don't understand how both sides can't see right down the middle. We've seen the shift in information coming from the right and the left and back and forth, the proponents of liberty and freedom. And so it's such a convolution for me to not see a commonality of freedom. I mean, do you really think that the government is here to help you? Well, there's two other bigger lies that go along with that one. I'll let you go look them up for yourself. Well, I wish I had my shirt pocket, my shirt right here where I could reach in there because I do have some notes.
Well, there's an interesting subject that's really taken over your chat room, and it's what's happened evidently in Palestine and Israel. There was a peaceful march, and Israelis opened up on them.
One was killed last I seen, but that'd been a couple of hours ago. So is there more death toll?
It sounds like that. You know what? If you don't mind, I will address that.
Sure, take that back. You bet.
You know, people that know me will see me there. I'll dress up in the prayer shawl. Sometimes the tefillin, the tallit and tefillin, and I blow the shofar. Okay, and I maintain that I am a spiritually ordained Messianic rabbi. But what's going on in Israel today, to me, you know, if these people there are truly the covenant people of God, how are they so inept that they cannot come to some peaceful arrangement with the Palestinians? You can hear all kinds of arguments and debates about that one way or the other. I don't buy it. The covenant people of God have always had the ability to make peace. Now, and then I have tremendous questions who these people really are. I think that was pretty much resolved a couple of years ago with the DNA testing, where the people in Israel, the vast majority of them, only showed about 5% Semitic. And what that means is that they were literally 5% of them were literally descendants of Shem, the son of Noah. And scripturally, that's where the covenant lineage comes through, the covenant people of God. Whereas the Palestinians and the Kurds actually showed 85% Semitic. So that's really an interesting concept. Now, without quoting verse in Scripture, I will say this: in the Old Testament, there's actually some books that address what's going on to this very day, and it said that this would actually happen. So, you know, I don't know what the heck to say about it. Is it written in stone scripturally? It's going to happen. There's nothing we can do about it. I just don't go. I don't go with that belief system, and I think that people need to learn how to love each other, learn how to help each other, and lift each other up by their bootstraps. Sometimes even turning the other cheek. I mean, you know, if you have the ability to turn the other cheek and make a friend out of an enemy, well, you have just accomplished one of the greatest things that that could possibly ever happen on this earth. You know, and of course it's a real challenge. But to me, there's something going on there that is really wrong. You know, people say, well, the Palestinians did this and the Palestinians did that. I think anybody would react the same way if you saw your homeland stripped away from you and given to another people. And I've looked at this for years and years, and it kind of went back and forth, back and forth. You know, I truly believe in you know, the 12 tribes of the house of Israel, the sons of Jacob, and their future, and the covenants that they made, and those things being instituted on the face of the earth, which was all, if you read the scriptures, it's all peaceful. See, that's where I have an issue. That's where I have a problem. Okay. Now, if you go to the Talmud and read some of that, they're talking about they got to destroy every infidel, every Gentile off the face of the earth before the Messiah can come. So again, now this gets very, very similar to the Quran and Sharia law. You know, so which is it? Yeah, who's who and what's what? But I always go back to Jesus Christ, and where he talks about, you know, the golden rule and doing unto your fellow man as you'd have them do unto you. And, you know, blessed is the peacemakers. So what's happening in that part of the world? I don't see any peacemaking taking place, okay, but not by either side. And I truly believe that a righteous people, a loving people, could take the lead in that and, you know, do something about it and bring unity there and tear down that wall, because I just don't believe that wall should exist. And that's according to some ancient scriptures also, that the nation of Israel or the people of Israel would not exist as a nation by a very particular definition. So there's some things there that needs to be addressed. I don't know who's going to address it. I don't know if Trump putting that the embassy in Jerusalem is going to do any good at all. I think it just kind of solidifies in the minds of the alleged Jews that are there that they are superior, and everybody's got to pay homage to them. So, I like the idea, the original idea, scripturally, of Israel and its performance in the last days, and it, bringing in the millennium and the 1,000 years of peace and their requirements and covenants that they made towards that end. But I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. And I really don't know how to get to the bottom of that. I know last time I checked, there was over something like 500 Christian churches in Israel now, and they're very oppressed. And a lot of people don't know that. But, how would that be if all the Jewish synagogues over here were oppressed? Okay, not allowed to talk to other people. Well, we'd be up in arms. Well, that's what they do, the Christians over there. And we have the Christians over here that are always supporting Israel at any and all costs. And they need to take another look at that. They need to go over there and try to proselyte and see what happens. You'll get spit on. They'll throw rocks at you. They'll call you any number of names. Goyim is probably their favorite name, which means you are nothing but chattel, livestock to be used as they please. So, yeah, I'm not on board with all this that takes place over there. It's actually deeply, deeply disturbing what's happening in that part of the world, not just there, but also in Syria. There's literally hundreds of children being killed by this crazy bombing, which I do not know actually how much we're involved in. I hear America's involved in that, and maybe we are. I don't have boots on the ground over there. Just got to go by the reports that come out, and I think a lot of those reports are slanted one way or another. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of innocent, good people that are being killed and slaughtered all over the Middle East for absolutely ridiculous and stupid reasons. So I would hope that Trump would address that someday. So far, it seems to me he's just exasperating the situation, especially when you give Saudi Arabia, you're going to sell them all this military might, which they are one of the biggest terrorist countries in the world, Saudi Arabia, and they live under Sharia law, and they are brutal to their women also. So why did he do that? See, that's the type of stuff that gets me scratching my head about our president. There are some things I do like, but I think he is putting America first in many, many ways, and ultimately we'll see that. Actually, we're seeing it pretty quick now. But as far as some of the other things that he does in this world, it just leaves me scratching my head. I just don't understand it.
Well, okay, I'll swap you here. Yeah, I don't think we'll have a lot of sympathy for politicians there in the chat room. And JJ, he plays a little music over here. He's making some good points there. When you're coming with a bucket of rocks against guns, you're not going to have any chance. That's amusing. That's what they're suggesting for kids now, to bring rocks to school. I guess it's better than nothing if that's all you got. And yes, Lou, my brother Flash, over across the waves over in Denmark, the gun loving is going to be squeezed right out of you for sure. Maybe not in a generation, maybe not 10 years, not 20, but within 50, I would say. We see a definite move and people cry out to make laws legal to codify, grab you right by your cod and fry it, and take that away. Your right to life. 1,500 wounded. So I saw earlier this morning they were positioning snipers, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people gathering at a wall or a barrier or a border or some type to keep them out of Palestine. And again, did they leave white or black and come back white? How does that happen? And Brandon talked some about that. The Christian ideology has been set forth back before the Balfour Agreement that started establishing and setting up, the setup for the takedown, that stalking horse to bring about the state of Israel that became a nation or state in 1948. And of course, after the 1967 war and the few days war, I forget, and taking the rest of the peninsula, 6 Day War, the rest of the peninsula from Egypt there, they established themselves as a might. Now, where did this little group of people come to be able to dominate such a large region? And go back again, and you see that the Brits set it up and America taking it over, because there's not really a lot of difference between Great Britain and America, is there, after all? Now, going back again to the religious aspect of it, this ideology that's preached from the pulpits that Israel is God's chosen people. And again, let's see, what does it say?
I got you.
Oh, okay. All right. If you sprinkle when you tinkle. Okay, so then, so back to the religiosity. Doctrine was being changed from the middle and later 1800s on, and especially grew prominence in the early 1900s with the Azusa Street revival, and brought about this ideology that there was some special thing for these people. Really is not, I'm sorry, I'm over here reading in the chat. What document? Yeah. Okay, so that they have some special right to occupy this region. And if you're looking at them as to be Semitic, and you're called anti-Semitic when you speak against the Zionist Israel, well, how does that even make sense if, they're only a small percentage of bloodline to Israelis or ancient Israelis? To me, it just, it's all set up, and it's a positioning of power for that region of the world, and a claim to own it. It's a logical fallacy. It's a appeal to their own authority, and it's the same thing we see in the courts. They claim their authority because by their authority they claim so. It's like being an evolutionist and say that these fossils are old because they're in old strata, and we know the strata is old because it contains old fossils. So run in circles, right? It's like a bowl of spaghetti. It's like some of the radio Mia talking here, as I was told, picking boogers. So I cut my beard off. I'll not be digging spaghetti when I'm a talking no more. Thank you very much, Patty. I confused you with the poop because it was kind of gaseous. It was a gas. What time here? We're pretty close to rolling into talking about some informants, supposed, whether they be paid or for whatever reason. But I think we're wanting to talk about one guy. We've got a lot of information that we can't share at present. A lot of timing right now. We will talk about a couple of folks. Slip of the tongue. Well, we'll try to hold that. Just out of respect, let me give you this back. Then I'm going to push you the mic here in a minute. Okay. Let's just open up full bore and pull the trigger. Let's go to Gary Hunt.
Oh yeah, let's go to Gary Hunt.
All right. So I'll some things I've heard is that he was photographed with the detonation button in Oklahoma City. He was seen at Waco during the siege and murder of those folks down there in Waco. Some other stories and that I've heard, and some bit about maybe him being an agent provocateur through all of that, and even now into this what's called the Patriot movement. We've seen a lot of people falling by the wayside. We've seen a lot of division, infighting, and as well as I do, just from knowing how these things work, that those are set by design. So, Gary Hunt, if I hope you'll take the scrutiny and maybe you'll give answers. So I'm just taking a ponder gander thinking about it, looking at it, and you will have the chance to respond. And maybe Brand would probably like to lead out in this.
Sure. Well, Gary Hunt, to me, and uncovering him is like uncovering an onion. You just go layer after layer after layer. The man is in his early 70s. He's got quite a history. What he reminds, anybody's ever watched the X-Files and the mysterious smoking man? That's what Gary Hunt reminds me of. It's hard to get a handle on him, but you got to go back and just look at history. And, he was at the Waco, Texas, dressed in an ATF uniform. I think that's beyond any shadow of a doubt. It can't even be contested. I've seen pictures. As far as him being the man with the detonator in his hand at the Oklahoma City bombing, I think it looks like him. I can't say for sure it is. But again, there's some of that circumstantial evidence that has to be considered. Gary Hunt comes on the scene a few years ago with Operation Mutual Defense with Ryan Payne and some others, and he got involved with that, which anybody that knows Ryan Payne and Operation Mutual Defense, he was heavily involved in the Bundy standoff, as Ryan Bundy stated from the courtroom when he pointed at Ryan Payne, said, "This man saved my life." I will vouch for Ryan Payne and his integrity, his honesty and goodness as a human being. So, but Gary Hunt managed to get involved with Ryan Payne and in Operation Mutual Defense. And there was just recently, there was 91 pages of documents released that Gary Hunt recorded in conversation with a lot of people that are involved with Operation Mutual Defense. And those documents, or that recording, was supposedly in his Dropbox, protected, and they come out to the public just before Ryan Payne is sentenced, which is very suspicious to me. But when you read those 91 documents, it's very obvious that Gary Hunt was provoking people. Okay, so this is what the man does. He's a provocateur, among other things. I think what really woke me up just recently, there's been other things too. I've been watching him for some time. He's done some things that my personal feelings are unforgivable, some of the things that he did. I'm really not able to share some of the stories without hurting some other people. So I can't give you all the details on that. But Gary Hunt has the thing that really kind of started getting my interest lately is when Vincent and I went to Denver to observe Bruce Doucette's trial. And what a kangaroo court. There's absolutely no possibility of winning as a sovereign citizen in that type of court. Can't happen. So Vincent and I were observers, and we reported on it, which I think kicked a hornet's nest. Because on the way back, the lady that we were staying with, Kim, which is Bruce Doucette's wife, called us and was very upset because a gentleman by the name of Roger Dodell told her that we were FBI agents, and that the 2 days that Vincent stayed back at the house because he was ill, he said that Vincent was rifling through all her private papers, etc., looking for incriminating evidence to bring her to trial. Now, who in the world would make up a story like that? I mean, that is beyond the pale. Well, some days after that, I had a chance to talk to an individual that actually sits on that board of National Liberty Alliance that is sponsoring and pushing the sovereign citizen movement, which also consists primarily of these common law courts, common law, or what they call continental marshals and administrators and all that stuff. And so he was giving me a list of these sponsors. And the reason he was doing that, sponsors and supporters, and the reason he was doing that, because I told him, absolutely do not sign any documents or papers that are arrest warrants or liens against political enemies, namely judges and sheriffs. I said, do not do that, because it's nothing more than a trap. So anyhow, we got in a lively little debate there, and he was trying to tell me by association why this is a good thing. And one of the names that popped up was Gary Hunt. And I stopped him dead in his tracks. I said, please repeat to me what you just said. And he told me that one of the supporters, sponsors of the sovereign movement is Gary Hunt. Well, okay, that's where that information that Roger Dodell sent to Kim came from. Because this whole thing is nothing but a big trap. And what Judge Anna J. Brown, the federal judge up there in Oregon, couldn't do, and what Gloria Navarro could not do as a federal judge here in Southern Nevada, this sovereign movement is doing. And namely is getting our good patriots, or righteous patriots, behind an 8-ball and send them to life in prison. And this was, I can't think of a more insidious plan, a more devious plan, because it appeals to your patriotism. It appeals, and this is one of the way they approach people. Are you a true patriot? Do you want to take your government back? Do you want to reestablish a republic form of government? Well, here's how we do it. Now, there was a time it did work like that. They know that doesn't work anymore. And when I say they, I'm talking about the deep state. They know that doesn't work like that any longer. And they have developed a trap to get all of our good patriots. And I'll tell you how far-reaching this is. Out of 64 counties in Denver, Colorado, the common law court and sovereign citizens court is in 54 of those counties. It's in 32 states. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people that are patriots that are trying to do the right thing. Now, the argument can be made that, we need to be martyrs or we're going to fall on our sword. Well, that's the best way to do it. But I always quote General George Patton, let the other son of a bitch die for his country. We need you alive and fighting to win this country back. In my belief system, there's a scripture that says use wisdom in all things. And the difference between the sovereign citizens movement when they sent out liens and arrest warrants is this. Now we have gone on the offensive. We have actually gone on the offensive. The Bundy Ranch standoff, the Malheur standoff, the Sugar Pine mine, and these other mines, that was all defensive, okay? And just keep that in mind because I think we can win with defensive maneuvers and continue to do so. The moment we have gone offense, then we're basically have taken another step towards out-and-out war. And I just don't think it's wise at this time to go down that road. But we need to recognize what is going on with the sovereign citizen movement in these common law courts. So there you go again. There's Gary Hunt pushing this whole thing. Now, Gary Hunt has decided to come out against myself and Vincent. And he has told other people that he will be putting out exposés. Well, I can't wait to see it. I really can't wait to see it. I think he's a master of propaganda. I think he's working for the deep state. So whatever he comes up with might raise some eyebrows. I still can't wait to see it. And so I could take issue with those things. So that's the big thing right there. There's another person that we're going to hold off on, but he's also been putting out lies, namely against me. But the person that's got the goods on him, who just got released from prison, no, they're not going to figure this out.
Somebody will.
Well, yeah, but they don't have no evidence. So he has the discovery. So he's going to put it out here as soon as he can. But we're waiting on him. We're not going to step on his toes. So, but anyhow, that's something to keep you interested in watching for. So, okay, I talked about Gary Hunt and my feelings about him. I think he's in bed, the deep state in bed. I think that his whole mission is to destroy the patriot movement, which it has become very, very effective in so many ways. Sometimes we get discouraged with some of these minor losses, but when you look at the government that's enjoyed a 95% conviction rate, and with the Bundys and the Patriots, we got them down to 5%. They look at that in a different way than we look at it. I mean, we're looking at it in a good way too, but they look at it as a total disaster. And that whole thing has got to be changed. That whole paradigm's got to be turned around. And so that's what Gary Hunt's all about. And with this Patriot, the sovereign citizen movement, they've co-opted it, taken it over, and turned it into a trap that we absolutely need to avoid. So, and that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Well, let's back up and just talk about when you first became aware of Gary Hunt. When did you first know him, meet him, or become aware?
Well, I've never actually met him.
Okay.
But the first time I really heard about him, I mean, in the back of my mind, I think I'd heard about him a few times historically. But when he really jumps off the page to me is that he actually went into the Malheur Refuge shortly after Lavoy Finicum was murdered. Now, what was that all about? Why would you show up at the last minute like that? I think he was trying to document the people that were in there. I think he was trying to document the number of firearms, weapons, and things like that, and relay that information to the FBI. So now, I got to tell you how I found out he was there. I was on a talk show with Jerry Roberts, challenging the rhetoric, and he was in the chat room there. Well, let me even back up a little bit more. When he found out that was going on that show, he put it all over Facebook. Every place he could put it, he put it out there. Patriots know Sherry Roberts is pretty much as a political hack for the left, though she is, in my opinion, she's a nice lady. I think she's tries to do the right thing, but she's a political hack for the left. The only reason I even went on the show is I'd heard, because she had been trying to get me on the show for like 6 months, but I heard Mark McConnell, after he was outed as an FBI informant, and he was on the show, and I wanted to rebut some of the things that he said, which were outright lies. So I contacted her and said, okay, yeah, I'll go on your show. And for those people that listen to it, and you go back in the archives and listen to it if you really want to, I did pretty well on that show. Pretty much everybody that called me after the show said that I prevailed in her own show. So anyhow, we're talking, and Sherry Roberts asked me, well, do you know Gary Hunt? And I said, I really don't think so. I know I haven't met him, and he was in the chat room, and then he pipes up and tells everybody, yeah, he met my son at the Malheur Refuge. So that's the unforgivable thing, in my opinion. Nobody's that stupid. If this man is truly a patriot, he wouldn't be exposing other people to potential arrest, incarceration. Now, we don't have to worry about that because we won these cases so there are no longer unindicted co-conspirators. However, he did this way back before that fact ever took place. So Gary Hunt committed a cardinal sin right at that point. And from that point on, I had tremendous distrust for him. We did communicate back and forth for a while. And at that particular time, I felt like I was learning as much from him, or more from him than he was learning from me. One of the things that he tries to take credit for is how he exposed all these different infiltrators at the Malheur Refuge, these government informants. But the fact of the matter is, if you just did a little bit of searching, all that information had already come out. And then he tried to capitalize on it as quickly and as fast as he could. And that is to just keep himself in good with the patriot community. And that kind of confused me at first, is why would he do that? Because I actually helped him identifying at least one person and possibly more. And then one day it hit me, if we can identify these people as a government informants, they can't use them in that arena any longer. Possibly have to send them to the other side of the country for any emissions. And so I think this man is like not just 2 steps ahead of everybody, but multiple steps ahead of everybody in what he's doing. I truly believe he is a deep state in bed, and he's somebody to be avoided. Or if you're like me, keep your friends closer, your enemies closer, and keep him, his information, and watch him very closely, because ultimately what you're going to see is total betrayal by this man.
That redacted list, the informants list, I've got that posted on my WordPress, and you can look at it, or I'll try to grab a link and bring it back over later on. Several people on there. There's a lot. There's more than just people working for the FBI. I think some people might have some glory seeking. This stolen valor that we was talking about. Some people have portrayed themselves to be other than what they actually are. Oops, I'll let that die. Let me give you back. Why don't you talk some about some of this stolen valor?
In what capacity?
Well, let's talk about Buddha.
Okay, well, Buddha. Buddha's actually still somewhat of a mystery to myself. I know how he came across to everybody, beginning with the Bundy standoff, and the Bundys took him in, as a confidential asset and a bodyguard. And of course, we come to find out that one of the things he used to be a confidential source is he's a former Marine and a former sniper. Well, when we were at the refuge, just before the FBI and the sheriffs were supposed to come in and take us all out in body bags, certain people just disappeared real fast, gone. And Buddha was one of them. And he came back like a week later with this story, which just didn't cut mustard probably with most people, definitely not with me. I knew something was up there. I didn't really know what it was. I got involved with, or talked to 2 of the people that actually were involved in taking him back to Arizona. And the more I listened to it, the more I realized there's something really out of line with this whole story. Well, and then we found out, it came out publicly that Buddha was not a Marine, had never been in the military. So he got accused of stolen valor, which I use that pretty loosely. My father at one time was the most decorated man from World War II in the state of Nevada. And he had 6 arrowheads for amphibious landings on enemy-held terrain in the South Pacific. And he used to talk about different people getting different awards. Like, for example, somebody got a crease in their ass from a bullet, and they get what do they call it, a Purple Heart, whereas other people got sick to the point they were going to die and had lasting effects the rest of their life, and they got nothing out of it. So, when it come to valor and stolen valor and things of that nature, he had his own unique perspective, but the people that stayed back and just pushed a paper or pushed a pencil never set foot in the battlefield. He did not consider that they should have the recognition and valor that those that fought and died, or even those that fought openly. There's a movie that was made about my father's platoons. The first one had 88% casualties. The second platoon had 92%, and that movie is called The Thin Red Line. And where those Army men, Seabees, literally got slaughtered, okay, by listening to their idiot commanders. To this day, I can't believe they just didn't send their guns on their commanders, because they had to send them up in groups of all the way up to 50 up these hillsides, and they wouldn't even make it to the top. They'd all be slaughtered. And then they'd send another group and another group and another group. So you had this tremendous slaughter that was going on. Now, you compare that with a lot of the soldiers that did come back, and that, they claim to have the same valor. And so I think it's a really a loose term. I think you have soldiers that fought very hard, and in their heart they felt like they were doing the right thing, which brings up another subject where they duped. And we know historically these false flags, the most well-documented one is Vietnam. Okay, Vietnam, the Secretary of State, can't think of his name right offhand, but just Robert McNamara, shortly before he died, which it wasn't that long ago, he basically made a confession, an admission, and he said they knew the Vietnam War could never be won. They also knew that the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which got us in there in full scale, never did happen. So, I was in the lottery 3 years or 2 years in a row, and if I'd have drafted, I would have gone. Now, if I'd have gone over there and shot the place up or killed a bunch of people, could I claim to have valor in that whole thing? Could I claim to have honor? No, of course not, because I would have been duped. All right, and I killed innocent people for the banksters and for the corrupt politicians in this country. So that whole issue needs to be, and that whole topic needs to be critically looked at. And we need to quit this nation building. We need to quit fighting wars for these banksters, which we've been doing for something like 200 years, and afford people in the rest of the country the same rights that we have. And we can't force those rights on them, but at least we're not going over there and taking everything that they have. And I think that's one of the things that Vincent talks about an awful lot. Well, let's cure the problem that's bringing all these try to cure the problem that's bringing all this illegal immigration in the first place. And I do agree with that. So this stolen valor thing, man, I had the opportunity to talk to Ryan Payne quite a few times, and some quite extensively, and why he, went from an Army Ranger fighting over in the Middle East to wanting to come back to the United States and fix this country, is because his whole platoon was caught behind enemy lines, and they were begging for extraction, all right? And it never came, and many of them were shot and killed. In fact, Ryan Payne's got tattoos of his brothers in combat, brothers in arms, on one whole arm that were killed over, got their names, birth dates, and the date they died. And, what he discovered was simply this. They needed casualties to keep promoting this war. And the United States government and the military will allow their own people to be slaughtered, okay, to get propaganda, to get the public opinion on their side, to get the politicians to invest more into the war. And so we get into this vicious cycle. And so that's why I caution everybody the way they use stolen valor. I will not accuse Buddha of stolen valor. I think his desire was in the wrong place. But personally, I feel like, hey, if you didn't get duped into going fighting an unconstitutional, immoral war, that you are really in a lot better position eternally than somebody that did. So the stolen valor thing, it just doesn't fly with me.
So real quick, go back and talk about Anna Brown again, because the redacted, for if you want to know what about the redacted, part of that was that she ordered that Gary Hunt take these informants' names off of the Burns Chronicles. And so I've reprinted those also. He had to take them down. So why? Explain that right there.
Well, the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing. One of the things I can tell you is when I was out at the Malheur Refuge and all the informants were out there, just talking to Terry Linnell, for example, or even talking to M.D. Lauder, they didn't know who the other informants were. Okay, as far as they knew, they were the only one out there. So now, in the case of Gary Hunt and Anna J. Brown, this could easily just be a big illusion to push their agenda, because Gary Hunt has got, he's an embed. He's a deep state embed. And, if you got Anna J. Brown coming after him, making to redact names, what does that do? It just makes him look more legitimate. That's all it does. And one of the things I tell people over and over and over, watch what they do. Forget what they say. Look at the end result of everything they do. Because, what's the motto of the Illuminati? Order out of chaos. They love chaos. They love people second guessing each other. They love people turning against each other. And they know how to do it, better than any nation in the world. The CIA that we have here, they are the masters of black ops, black psyops. So, again, one of the most important lessons I've ever learned is simply to sit back and watch the results. Now, once you realize you could. What did Jesus say? You shall know them by their fruits. Once you see these evil fruits that come out, then you will. It's impossible to deceive you any longer from that point on. And then you really need to take stock of who you are, and are you up to the task? And standing up to these people, because these people here are, in some ways, are incredibly dangerous. I look at Gary Hunt as an incredibly dangerous man that has a lot of connections, a lot of power. And so, I'm when I call him out, I know exactly what I'm getting into. But I've seen his fruits. And that's what I go by.
He's already kind of called the attack on you already now.
Yeah.
Let's Terry Lionel, that's Mama Bear. And I know her personally from 2014. And again, this into last year up at the federal courthouse. And she was there, and I turned around and was walking by. And as I passed, that twinkle of an eye, that moment of recognition, I said, Mama Bear. Well, anyways, we've talked, and we're going to talk some more. Ocelli effect, Ocelli.com. Monday, we're tentatively set for Monday at 5 o'clock here on the left coast Pacific time, and it will be 8 o'clock Eastern. And back home in the hills, we're looking at 7 o'clock p.m. We're going to talk. I like Mama Bear. I told her when I saw her, I gave her a hug, and I told her, I said, I'm glad you did what you did. Her observation, her witness really, I think, was instrumental in these not guilty verdicts in Oregon. So very proud for her. We all have different motives in what we do, I assume. Sometimes it's for profit, and sometimes for an ideology. And Mama Bear pretty good as well. I say as well. I mean, you know her very well, and got to spend a lot of time with her. We won't talk too much about Mama Bear because, like I said, we'll be talking with her Monday.
Well, let me just bring out one thing.
Take the mic.
That a lot of people don't know, but if it weren't for Terry Linnell, we would have never gotten John Kilman on the stand. Okay? She pushed that with one of the defense attorneys multiple times, that you got to get to John Kilman on the stand, that he had entrapped a lot of people out there at the refuge, all that target practicing and training and all that stuff, all the shooting that was taking place out there was John Kilman entrapping the Patriots out there. And she pushed it and pushed it. If I remember right, it was like the third call before the defense attorney, which I believe was Lisa Maxwell, decided to find out who this guy was. There was a couple of us had his phone number, and by taking those phone numbers, they were able to trace him down and get him on the stand. Then, once he admitted to what he did, after we got those not guilty verdict, the jury foreman came and talked to us and told us of some of the jurors that after that completely switched to our side, to the defense's side. That would have, if she hadn't come forward and exposed herself as an informant, that would have never, ever happened, plus the rest of which you know about, but we'll save for Monday.
Yeah. Before you take that away, this John Kilman, he had another name. When y'all was trying to find him by the name John Kilman, and it was his girlfriend or second or third girlfriend or something down the line that answered. Take your okay.
So a couple of us had his phone number. We gave it to the defense, and he started making these calls. Well, the first call they just gave up on initially because I was the one that gave them the phone number, and they got somebody that didn't recognize the name, which is his ex-wife. She didn't know him as John Kilman. So they came back and told me that the number was no good, and I said, yeah, it is. Then we had another witness that came forward and had the same phone number. So then they decided, well, let's really check this out and see what's going on there. So they persisted, and finally she said, well, you might want to talk to his girlfriend, which turned out to be an ex-girlfriend, but she referred to another girlfriend, an existing girlfriend, and she recognized the name, and that was a handle. John Kilman was a handle, which is interesting. Look at the names they pick. Killman. Okay. I don't know why they do that. I think it's an Illuminati thing. But anyhow, she gave his real name, which is Fabio Menaggio. Now, he's kind of known as Fabulous Fabio Menaggio now, because when he got on the stand, he couldn't speak very good English anymore. But when he's out the refuge, he spake perfect English. He gets on the stand, you can hardly stand him, but to the credit of the defense attorneys, when they were cross-examining him, they got out all of the pertinent information. At the time he was served by the marshals, he was actually employed by the Hualapai Bureau of Indian Affairs there in Arizona. And then from what I understand, once they found out who he was and what he was up to, he got fired. So just who was Fabio Menaggio? Well, Fabio Menaggio is an Interpol agent, okay, from France. All right. He was working under a program which the FBI uses quite a bit called an InfraGard. And that allows them to subcontract people that they would rather have do their dirty job, possibly make them where they don't look so bad. And we don't know the extent of Fabio Menaggio, what he did there, because, again, he's a mercenary. And he's not held accountable like other people are. Does he have diplomatic immunity? I wouldn't doubt it. I think this is some of the things that they do. And so was he involved with setting up that kill stop? I suspect heavily, and I'll tell you why. The Oregon State Police understood that it was against state law. All right. The FBI understood it was against federal law. But what if you take somebody that's got diplomatic immunity that's subcontracting and it has to be under a specific corporation? We do not know what the corporation would have been at the time, but I believe it was under Uranium One's corporation. That's what I believe. We know that Uranium One was after Dwight and Stephen Hammond's ranch, the $5 billion of uranium that is there. So they have ways of covering their asses through these insidious means. One of the things that came out with during the interrogation of the FBI is that they recognized that Grant County, which our patriots were heading for, Lavoy Finicum and that white truck and everybody in it, was a non-UN zone. It was a non-UN zone. So what does that tell you about Harney County, where you got 60% of the people employed by the federal government? Okay, obviously it's considered a UN zone. And this tells you how far the Kate Brown and the rest of them and the government of Oregon has gone to socialism and communism. They want to be under the UN. So yeah, they had to get to Grant County. Our people did to do their teaching and education of the constitutional rights. They had to get there, and they stopped them just before they got there in a UN zone, and ambushed them. I have very, very strong suspicions that Fabio Menaggio was heavily involved in that. Now, before people say, well, the French weren't there, and, the mercenaries weren't there, all you got to do is go look at some YouTube clips with Gary Darby and some of the others, and you will see actual French license plates on the MRAPs. You will see that the mercenaries did not have any name tags or identification, and they would not even speak to us. They would not give their identification.
That's on YouTube, that video.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So this is how insidious this whole thing is. The players in it, Fabio Menaggio was a huge part of that whole thing. Also, he was sent into southern Utah to look for some of the people that had got out of that refuge and were living there, taking up residence there. And he was there to find them, okay? And I won't mention one of the other names that I believe was there because that's going to be coming out shortly anyhow. And he was told in no uncertain terms when he got there by some of the people that they knew who he was, they knew what he was up to, and that he better get out of Dodge. And he did exactly that. He literally ran out of McDonald's white as a ghost, getting out of there. So this is the type of people you're dealing with. This is why I say the FBI is one of the greatest criminal organizations. And now it should be obvious to everybody that, from top to bottom, from the leadership all the way down the rank and file, is totally corrupted. Vince and I got a chance to listen to Special Agent Ryan English and his interpretations on the Constitution of the United States. And I will tell you that right on down the line to the rank and file, they're all completely corrupt.
They take their oath to the FBI. Leave it there. It's fine.
Okay.
To the FBI oath. That's the oath, and not necessarily to the Constitution, which the Constitution is what to contain government. It's a contract between government officials. And this is some of the things that Bruce Doucette was speaking of, that the citizen is the member of the government. And then once they leave office, then they go back to being their own sovereign. Kings and queens without subjects, as he put it in the courtroom. Thought that was pretty elegant.
You also mentioned the 17 corporations.
Yeah, speak to that real quick.
Well, one of Bruce Doucette's defense strategies was to identify the United States government as a corporation, and as such is not beholden to their oaths, okay? Because you have bylaws in a corporation, and those bylaws are not necessarily in line with the Constitution of the United States. Well, this got pretty interesting, and finally, Special Agent Ryan English said, no, the United States government is not a corporation, but it employs 17 major corporations. My question is this: where's the real difference? There is no real difference. If they're employing 17 major corporations that have bylaws that are in conflict with the Constitution of the United States, and they are allowing that to exist, then they are, as Bruce said, Bruce come right out and said, you are in violation of conspiracy laws against the United States and racketeering. He called them a bunch of racketeers, and rightly so. So when he said that, I just absolutely about fell over. I was stunned, and you and I went down the list, and we were able to identify all of these 17 major corporations.
I don't think we got them all through there, but
pretty close.
Yeah, let me jump over and I'll try to make a list. And let's see if we can recall them. Anybody there in chat can think of any of these agencies. You're fine. Leave it right there because you got to go?
No, I just couldn't.
Okay. You might move that back if you want to. Let's do a sound check there too. We're going to split the mic and see how this works. Go ahead and let's try that. Give us a sound check, Brand.
Testing.
Sit back and be comfortable. Let's see that. Okay. It's probably too far away right here without projecting your voice. Let's just give it a sound check.
Okay, testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Now we'll just talk like we're talking normal here in the house.
Okay.
Probably too low. Give us a 1 2 3 or a check.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Okay. So whoops, I let it die again. Here, I'll give you this back. Okay. You'll have to open it back up.
I'll check it out.
All right. So we've got 17 corporations. I'm going to start off and I'm going to say IRS. Then I'm going to say, and until Brand gets back in there, hold your contributions or you'll need to repost it. So go ahead and let's help fill this list. IRS, BATF. I wonder about FBI and CIA. I'm going to put them off on the side. We'll reconsider them, see what everybody thinks about those. We got the U.S. Post Office. Maybe the BATF should be over there. Maybe they're part. So U.S. Postal Service. Let's see. Federal Reserve. You get back in?
That's a guaranteed.
Yeah. Did you get back in the chat?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, you guys, give us some thoughts here. You go ahead and hold on to it. I'll take this notepad and keep writing it out here. So I've got 4, possibly 6 so far. So what do you think? IRS, BATF, U.S. Postal Service, U.S. Forest Service, right?
Yeah. Bureau of Land Management.
BLM.
Department of Interior.
Department of Interior is kind of like the head of a lot of these other octopus arms, right?
Yeah, but it's still a corporation.
I'm thinking probably so. Any contributions from the RLM peeps?
It looks like I lost them all.
Did you like? Lose him again?
I got that part.
Oh, yeah, it's truncated, so he can't get back since we fell out and re-signed back in. All right, any contributions into this? And also tell me how that sound check was, you guys. Or tell Brand, he's got the pad over there. Okay, let's see. What else do we got? BLM, U.S. Forest Service.
EPA.
What is it?
EPA.
The EPA, very good one, yeah. EPA. What about Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA?
I don't believe that is, because those are ceded lands to the government, which is an interesting concept. But they deal directly with them.
And they fall under the Department of Interior, I think. BIA.
I don't know. Maybe. Could very well be.
So Department of Interior.
Yeah.
We've got that. Bureau of Land Management. We've got some possible alphabet agencies. FBI, CIA, DEA. So we got 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe 12. Anybody got anything to say there on our audio check and our list? So there's an incomplete list anyways, even if they're right or wrong. All right, let me back up here. Where was I thinking that? What time is it?
It is 11:36.
All right. Now, this John Kilman, he was called. One guy we're not going to talk about in particular right now. Who else? Who else was called out? Who was in that other truck? Or who else was supposed to be there? Or who else was the
Mark McConnell?
Mark McConnell. What do we know about Mark McConnell?
Well, he is the $25,000 man. He got paid $25,000 to betray his fellow man, his fellow patriots. It's all about money.
And that works on a sliding scale for what they call that when they get an interaction.
Exactly. It's when they have an event.
Event, it's called. And they're called CHS, which is confidential human source. Mm-hmm. Used to be confidential informants or rats. I don't know what they call them. Several different names. Stoolies, stool pigeons way back when. And maybe some people were forced into it and then just liked it, or I don't know how they get to that point. But,
well, if you've got a long record, as some people I know, criminal record, you are prime. If you can pass some of their tests, you are prime to be recruited as a government informant.
Seems to me like I thought that CHS could not have a criminal record, so I don't know how that works out with the FBI and other agencies.
And just put them under InfraGard.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, maybe there's channels to get around it somehow. Mm-hmm. Not sure at all. All right, where do we go from here? Anybody else? Mark McConnell. Who else? There was somebody else there.
Well, you got Melissa Lauder.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then, of course, Terry Linnell, which will be on Monday. The guy named Will Coleman, Kullman. And I don't remember all the names. Most of the ones that are out there were out there really for a very short time and left. I think they were just out there passing to see what they could see and specifically report back on. I know there was a rancher, which was just south of where we were, and he was paid I think something like $3,000 for his testimony and lies that he put out. I don't recall his name, but he got up on the stand, flat out lied. I mean, one of the worst lies you could possibly imagine. He talked about a point on the freeway there where he could see when we came in to the refuge and tried to say we were clearing the buildings in a military style. You can drive up to that exact same spot and you can't see anything. It's impossible from that position to observe anything that's going on that refuge. So, but I don't remember his name. Him and his son both were involved. I remember meeting them. There was other informants. Actually, there weren't informants. There was a couple guys who went in there that broke into a safe, and I happened to catch them in there. I didn't realize what they had done at the time, but they gave that money via carrier to Am and Bundy that they got out of the safe, the money and the credit cards, and that was a total setup. Now, if I ever saw those two guys again, I would probably be able to recognize them. But that was the only time I ever saw them in the almost a month that I was out there. I only saw them that one time.
So what happened after Ammon got that they gave that to him?
Oh, that was interesting. He just put it away. He realized it. Well, I can quote him when he was on the stand. He said, "I knew that money wasn't mine, and I wasn't going to take it." And so it sat there until the FBI came in and they took it from there. Excuse me, is that the one? It might have been the one that Wayne Emer decided to take with himself. I'm not sure. But this much I do know, that whole thing ended up in court, and Ammon testified I knew it wasn't my money, our money, and I wasn't going to use it. So I truly believe those serial numbers were recorded. It was marked money. I believe all those credit cards. There was papers in there, because I saw them myself. There's papers and receipts and stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the PIN numbers were in there also. And, to try and entice Ammon or others to take those credit cards and use them.
So somebody would have had to have it if there was to set up the credit cards. If they were going to try to make that a setup, then somebody would have had to know they was coming and got there to plan it. So how much time was there? Enough time that there was talk in town to go to the Malheur Refuge, or delay, or what? When the Hammonds turned themselves in, what happened at that point in time?
Well, even shortly before that or shortly after that, we had a meeting, and there was quite a few of us that decided to go with Ammon's idea of going out to the refuge and continue the protest there. So it would have been pretty darn close. Now, the very next day is when those two FBI guys, and I think they're the same ones that were cruising around town, causing trouble too, because there was two of them.
But so they could have very easily shoot. I said easily.
Yeah. Well, Chris Briles, who
they could have planned it. Let me stop real quick. They could have put that in when they broke into it. In that
absolutely.
Absolutely. So did you see the cards?
Yeah, I saw them myself. Chris Briles, who was the fire chief there that caught the FBI guys and identified them driving around town there in Burns and causing trouble.
Dressed as like they were militia.
He basically identified the same two that I saw that were out there at the refuge broke into the safe.
NSA, thanks, Grimmer.
And I think, I don't know if that stuff was originally in the safe. I tend to doubt it. I think they broke into it and came out and said it was in the safe and gave it to Ammon Bundy. If they had just walked up to him and said, "Look what we found." But this way, now a safe was broken into, correct? Okay, when you break into a safe or somebody you're dealing with, now you're in a conspiracy and you are racketeering with them people. And the information, I was right there when the information was given to him, and where this maroon envelope was found. So that was probably all recorded by some hidden camera, audio and video, and they took it with them. And I never did see those two guys ever again. But interesting enough, that was one of the big things that was addressed during his court case, was what happened to that maroon envelope. You stole it. They were trying to say you stole it. It was found in your possession. Well, his possession, wait a minute, his possession was, at that time, it was found in the refuge. How can you say that was in his possession? Or even if it was Dwayne Emer that took it inadvertently, that wasn't Ammon. That was for darn sure. So I looked at that as a total setup. I'm absolutely convinced it was a total setup. They tried to use it in court, but they didn't have enough ammunition to actually use it in court against Ammon. So it failed pretty miserably.
I think Kate found us a link here. I'm going to go check that out here. Just one sec. of the other corporations. I think that's what that is. So if I get lost here in chat, I'll be back.
Well, remember, what's interesting about this was admitted by the government during Bruce Doucette's case, that they had and he used the exact words, 17 major corporations.
Yeah, that doesn't even talk about all the interconnections.
Right.
It's like a big bowl of spaghetti. It's like a humongous, it's like the giant ball of yarn made out of spaghetti, all rolled up.
Try to unravel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's on a need-to-know basis. These people are compartmentalized on a need-to-know basis, and they will do whatever their superior tells them. Then if you talk to their superior, he only knows so much. You go to his superior, he only knows so much, and this is all by design. And, you don't question. They don't allow them to question what's going on, and you get fired immediately. Look at Larry Wooten, the whistleblower for the BLM. Okay, as soon as he came out with that, he's a free thinker, thinking for himself. He saw a lot of these anomalies, these crimes that were taking place that happened with the Bundy standoff in 2014, involving Dan P. Love and others. And he got the information out. Well, look what happened to him. Okay, he gets demoted. He gets shuffled off into some other dark corner of the building in the basement probably, and gets shuffled off. Well, see, this is what they do to whistleblowers, or people that do become informed and want to do the right thing. They make an example out of them, so the rest of them won't go down that same road. So that just goes to show. I mean, it's really a disgusting system of compartmentalization and on a need-to-know basis.
Okay, I'll hand you this back right here. Let's see where. I was lost balance. So I didn't. If you'll scroll up and you can go click that link that Kate put.
Oh, okay.
And let me get you to read through there. And we'll fill out this list here and then.
Kate.
Kate, yeah, spelled with a Q-U-I.
Oh.
E-T-E.
Is it way up there?
Yeah, not too far. Matter of fact, I copied it to your flip tray.
Okay.
You know how to open that, which I wouldn't know how. Here, let me sit up.
Yeah, she doesn't have a link right there.
Yeah, I'll find it for you real quick.
So anyhow, I noticed somebody was talking about the Federal Reserve right there, and how they print money, but they never print the interest. But then they got to print more money to cover the debt, and it just spirals out of control. And folks, that's what happens, and that's why you got inflation. And eventually, if it's left uncontrolled, a gallon of milk is going to cost you $100. A loaf of bread, $200, or whatever. I'm just using those as examples. And this has happened historically before. That if there's no accounting for your money, then you really don't have a sound money system. But what you have is a small handful of people in the world that are totally controlling your monetary system and manipulating it for their own nefarious means. And so, but I will say a few things going back about 2014, and I believe this is very credible from some of the things that happened. But the Marines under Dumford, I think it is, actually took over the Federal Reserve. And at first I didn't believe it, but then I saw certain things. The quantitative easing was done away with, and quantitative easing was more money is put into the economy during the Obama administration with incredibly high interest rates. And it was just to keep it going for a certain time until they decided to create a collapse. Well, they did it with the Marines did away with that under General Dumford. I'm pretty sure that's the right name. And then, so they did away with quantitative easing, but they put 0% interest rates on the money that was being borrowed. And they tightened up the money supply to make sure it wasn't going to the, somebody's special lobbyist or anything of that nature. We all know about Dianne Feinstein or was it Nancy Pelosi and her husband? I think it was both of them that got these good old boy loans from the Obama administration, and their pet projects went bankrupt, which is very common. And then, of course, they paid themselves as CEOs ungodly amounts of money legally. So it's just a way of getting money to your friends, and they'll bring it into the back door for you. Like Obama has done, pay for play. What do they call that? I forget the name that they call that, but it's pay for play. You rub my back, I'll rub your back. So anyhow, that all kind of quit. Well, not kind of, it did. It came to a screeching halt. So what it made me realize is there are some people that understand this monetary system. I think Ron Paul is the best I've ever heard of. And one of the most important things he ever said was that we have to have competing currencies. And initially that doesn't sound very good. But when you have a country that is sick, like this country, you've got to have some sort of medium of exchange that will continue, but you want to replace it over a period of time with sound money. And that's when, see, if you try to cut off all our fiat and specie money overnight, you're going to cause total chaos and a complete meltdown in our economy. But if you introduce a competing currency, which happens to be gold back, it will, over a period of time, displace all of the fiat and specie money. And that appears to be what Trump is getting ready to do now. We're talking about a gold standard. So, and quite honestly, I've always felt that was one of my specialties, is understanding our monetary system, the way it was supposed to function, the way it is non-functioning today, and how to get it back. And what I'm seeing is the correct way. Now, if you go back just a few years ago, you had certain people in the International Monetary Fund that were advocating we had to get corner on all this gold. There was supposedly all this gold in the Philippines, and if we wanted to survive economically, we had to get this gold. I forget all the names that were involved in that, and I took great issue with that. We didn't have to get all the gold because true wealth comes from human production. The only thing we had to do, we can use any medium of exchange that we want as long as we keep it from going to the wrong people. And our founding forefathers understood that any monetary system that never went outside the parameters of 3% inflation and 3% deflation would work. Now, they had to maintain a gold-backed monetary system. However, they never did interfere with stocks, bonds, specie, and fiat money as long as it was not considered legal tender to be used for, across the board in our country. That didn't come about until the 16th Amendment, when that started the ball rolling, and it became the only legal tender, so we no longer have competing currency. So I really liked what she said there. She brought out a really good point, and everybody needs to be aware of that. And the fact that Trump has decided, that what I'm hearing, it's in the initial stages, that we're going to go to a gold-backed currency. I think what he's going to do is he's going to make it a competing currency. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's going on the rest of the world, too. You've got the Asian investment banking system. You have the Chinese yuan, which is gold-backed currency. And it's very interesting if you look at one of their, let's say, one of their bills. It has actually gold thread running in it. But you can take that bill and you can put it in an ATM machine in a participating nations, and it will literally kick out gold coins. So this is the direction a big portion of the world is going. If we want to be able to compete with that, because good money always replaces bad money historically. Gold is good money. It always it's a hedge against inflation. It has both an intrinsic as well as an extrinsic value to it. In other words, intrinsically, it is valuable within itself. It has many uses, not just jewelry, beautiful jewelry, but it's used in a lot of manufacturing processes, computers, cell phones, things of that nature, which become a vital part of our economy today. So it has intrinsic value as well as extrinsic value. And that's really the direction that ultimately we need to go, but in baby steps, so that we can keep the economy stable and don't go collapsing.
Great. So thank you very much, Kate. This is a very, very good link that you provided. If I can speak like the Donald, very, very good. Comes from every CRSRreport.com. and that is the Federal Government Corporation. An overview. Down just a little bit here, we'll read a couple of chapters and close out the broadcast for today. So the government corporation model has been utilized by the federal government for over a century. Today's government corporations cover the spectrum in size and function from large, well-known entities such as the U.S. Postal Service and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation to small, low-visibility corporate bodies such as the Federal Financing Bank and the Department of the Treasury and federal prison industries in the Department of Justice. The government does not possess a general incorporation statute as states do. Each government corporation is chartered through an act of Congress. The use of such acts to charter each corporation has resulted in a wide variance in the legal and organizational structure of government corporations. That said, the Government Corporation Control Act of 1945, as amended, does provide for the standardized budget, auditing, debt management, and depository practices for those corporations listed in the Act. Within the executive branch, no one agency is responsible for the oversight and supervision of government corporations. Neither the House nor the Senate have single committees with the responsibility to oversee all government corporations. Instead, each corporation is overseen by the committees or committee with jurisdiction over its policy area. Many government corporations, such as the Tennessee Valley Authority, have been established to exist in perpetuity. Other government corporations, such as the U.S. Enrichment Corporation, though, have been designed to serve as transition vehicles to transform from governmental entities into private firms. That right there, I kind of fumbled on there speaking, but seems to be rather important, that transition to private firms. Again, we see, set up for the takedown, the stalking horse, from the stalking horse hustle to the tortoise two-step. It is a setup for a takedown. I like to keep reading this, but I'd invite you to do so for yourself. And let me see if I've lost chat, and I'll try to pop right back on over there. It looks like I'm still here. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for coming along again here, Brand.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. I hope you all have absorbed some information. And Grimner, thank you very much, good sir. You're great and mighty, and I appreciate you producing this. And here sometime in the future, I'll be back with 2 computers and putting it out again myself.
Thanks,
VinE.
VinE.
Here we are with What Matters and Ponder Gander. Till next time, people, say peace.
All right, VinE, thanks. I want to pass along a message there from the YouTube chat.
Hey.
American Life 7022 says good stuff.
Here's the blooper reel. Bloop. There we go. I got something in my ear.
All right, he's not listening to me.
All right. Derp, 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 derp.
Bye.